This is Eric Miscoll with EMS Now, and welcome to this edition of the EMS. As always, I'm joined by my colleague Phil Stoughton from down under in Australia, who's woke up extra early in the morning to join us here today. So thank you for that, Phil.
You're welcome.
Our topic today we build is kind of high-level manufacturing in the United States. Let me give it some quick context before I introduce our guests. There's been a lot of discussion in the United States about how the U.S. has lost its manufacturing competitiveness and over the years. And we've actually even did a show on EMS on that about a month ago, where we talked about restoring U.S. competitiveness. And I think that what the U.S. has certainly lost over the years has been that high volume, low mix manufacturing of many products, mostly in the 3C sectors, the computer, consumer, and communications. But there certainly are some great examples of what's going on in the United States, some excellent manufacturing still taking place. And so we've invited a couple of US-based EMS companies who are doing work here to tell us about the work they're doing and share some insights on the industry. So we welcome back to the show Brad Heath, the CEO of Virtex Enterprises. And we no mistaking who's who on this screen, by the way. And we also have Jim Kircher, the CEO of Libra Industries, joining us for the first time today. So guys, thanks for taking the time to come and speak to us and share your insights on what's happening and the good stuff that's happening with US manufacturing. Let's begin, as always, by allowing you each to introduce yourselves and your companies. And Jim, since this is your first time on, we'll defer to you to go first, please.
Yep, thanks, Eric. Happy to be here today with Brad, talk a little bit about our companies. So Libra Industries is a company that was formed from 3 legacy companies. And what we are today is a systems integrator of complex products with a pretty broad range of verticals to help our customers simplify their supply chain solutions. And so the legacy companies, I just talk about them real quick, were Gem City is based here in Dayton, which I'm talking to you from here today. And they were a machine and special equipment company. Then they did some system integration, some complex products. And then we've pieced that together with the legacy Libra Industries, which was mostly PCBA, box build, with some sheet metal and fab and cable and wire harness capabilities. And then the last one was a tier 1 EMS facility that we bought down in Guaymas, Mexico. And they do machining, systems integration, some sheet metal fab work, and some cable and wire harness. So pretty broad range capabilities behind the systems integration. And yeah, that's who we are today.
Okay. And yourself, what do you tell us about you?
I've been in the EMS industry for about 20 years. Most of that time was with split between Jabil and Flextronics. Worked all different aspects of the industry, and started with Jabil in 2000. So saw a significant chunk of their growth in the early years. Before that, my initial career was in aerospace. Started as an avionics engineer, and then in between, I did some work in the motion technology industry for working for Fallhaber as their chief commercial officer.
Okay, excellent.
Very
Thank
good.
you for that. Brad, how about you, sir?
Sure, absolutely. So Virtex is a 21-year-old company that I started back in 1999. Originally focused on prototype, quick turn, low volume. Over the years and through several acquisitions, we've expanded to primarily aerospace and defense. We do PCBAs, we do precision machining, wire and cable harness assembly, system level assembly, reverse logistics, full supply chain. So we've got 9 locations around the US, 1 in Mexico. But most of our customers, like I said, 70% is aerospace and defense, so most of them are US based. Great business, high mix, low volume, a couple facilities dedicated to ultra low volume. And we pretty much characterize ourselves in 4 regions, the Midwest, the Southwest, the Northeast, and then the New England area. So, each of those is kind of set up to handle particular segments and markets, very, very strong presence of the aerospace and defense sector down in the Southwest and in the Mid-Atlantic. New England and the Midwest are a little heavier on medical, but also a really nice piece of aerospace and defense. So it's been a fun couple of years between COVID and now the supply chain stuff. My background, actually, I started as a process engineer with Texas Instruments back in the mid '80s. A couple of years later, went to a small contract manufacturer down in Austin, Texas, and I've kind of been here ever since. So I think I've been doing EMS almost as long as EMS has been around. When we were just part stuffers was kind of how I started before people actually started doing a lot of supply chain in that. And we've taken a lot of the things tier one guys have done all along and tried to bring that into the tier three market. For the guys doing $2 to $20 million, which is kind of our sweet spot for a customer base.
And you've grown quite a bit through acquisition lately, Brad, and the last kind of 3-4 year journey since you were actually acquired has been interesting.
Yeah, I brought on a private equity partner, Inside Equity, back in 2017. They had visions of us as a platform company, and we've done 4 acquisitions and a couple small asset purchases since then for some IP. So it's been a bit of a crazy ride. We actually did our latest acquisition back in February this year. We acquired Altron in Anoka, Minnesota, and did all of that remotely, and we've been doing most of the integration remotely. So that's been a new first, and but it's went really, really well. We love the facility, we love the team there, great customer base. So it's really helped expand a couple of our verticals, and just been really, really good. But yeah, we've been averaging 1 new acquisition, sometimes with multi-sites. When we acquired PPI Time Zero, we picked up 3 locations. We reorganized part of that to where that is now the Mid-Atlantic region and part of the New England region. So kind of structured it so that it worked better with the core Virtex and our core customer Competitiveness. So yeah,
I think the challenge when I look at what you've done, Brad, and I think it's interesting from Jim's point of view as well, is when you start to build that like group of facilities, how do you maintain that small dynamic entrepreneurial company that really feels like a good tier 3 player, strong local connection to a customer base, and build some kind of culture on top of that is like the Virtex culture, or in Jim's case the Libra culture? That must have been one of the key challenges of the last few years.
It is and it isn't. A lot of the stuff that we were doing pre-COVID, we're still doing. I have monthly site meetings with all of the site directors. We did reorganize it into the regions about 18 to 24 months ago, where my executive team, who are also general managers. So we're very, very flat. So we're very hands-on. Pre-COVID, I was in most of the facilities once a year. Obviously, that's been a little bit less. But we kind of tend to look at these things as micro factories. So they all have common tools where it makes sense. We share best practices, within the facilities at the monthly site meetings. Then we do a monthly meeting at the executive level with our PE firm, every month. But, everybody has been driving, the same types of initiatives to go ahead and get the same improvement and see the same, obviously we don't get the exact same results because in some cases we've been doing this, for 20 years, in other places we've only been doing it for 3. So, but it creates a great culture because everybody speaks the same language. Everybody does a lot of the same stuff. We've kept all of the legacy ERP systems. We do all of it with BI dashboards and data lakes. Instead, that was a better use of the money than converting everybody to the same thing and causing everybody to learn new. So the fact that when we come into a new acquisition, we don't try and change everything they're doing. We really look hard at what are they the best at. We don't buy value plays. We buy really, really good companies that we think we can make better and we can leverage, some of the things that they have that they do really, really well as part of our value creation strategy. So it's a little bit different than the way a lot of people think of acquisitions. We don't want to buy something that's broke. So when we go into something, we go, wow, these guys are really, really strong at this. Let's go understand why, and then go figure out how to roll that out as a best practice.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, like Brad at Libra, we have a flat, organizational level hierarchy. But unlike Brad, what we've done is we put a single ERP system in, and all our systems, the MES systems, shop floor systems, kind of standardize them across all our factories, and that allows us to kind of seamlessly manage the manufacturing from site to site, and to move it from site to site where it makes sense for a customer. But for the management team, we have pulled together a management team. Half of it, comes from the legacy businesses that the company was formed from, and the other half of the management team comes from basically tier 1 EMS. So kind of trying, it is a balancing act, try to keep that intimacy with the customers that small companies have. But then have repeatable, scalable, kind of systems and processes, and a mindset of how you build that kind of business out. And so we brought some really good, management talent in to put that repeatable, scalable kind of infrastructure in to help us grow, because that's really what we see in front of us for the next several years is a pretty good growth clip. That's
And I know Brad sees more acquisitions in his future. What about you guys at Libra?
Yeah, we are being opportunistic and looking to add on capabilities. We're not looking to acquire anything to grow for growth's sake, but to add good capability mix into the organization. We do have an eye out for that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's actually an important part too, is in looking at the acquisitions, and Phil, I know you know this, as we've talked about this, very, very frequently, but, one of Virtex core values is being in the market, serve the market. So we need to be in the regions where our customers are. And then our best referral source, our best new business is those customers getting us into other divisions. So as we look at acquisitions, we look at ones that are complementary to our existing customer base, and how can we serve them better? We kind of treat it as a land and expand strategy from the business development side. And, because our business is so high on the aerospace and defense, we have a separate business development group that works a combination of what we call strategic accounts, which is their goal is just to expand existing place within those same customer base, into new locations. And then the other portion of the biz dev side on the aerospace and defense is actually going after ones that we're not penetrating much at this point. And maybe we have one facility that's doing locations, but there's a number of the large A&D players that we're doing 5 and 7 locations, worth of work for them. So, we want to continue to expand that because the more we're doing with them, the more we can do for them. And sometimes that's expanding within a vertical where we're only doing PCBA and we want to do wire and cable harness, or we want to do machining work, or do engineering development. We're doing pure product development. We've got 3 teams around the country that actually do product design for customers. So expanding that piece with the guys who are not doing it for, we're doing test development. So there's a lot of different ways to go do that, but we want to expand that footprint within the existing customer base, because the cheapest customers to grow are the ones we already have.
It makes sense, doesn't it?
Let's talk about the type of business you're doing, the type of manufacturing you're doing. You've been alluding to the various sectors, and obviously, like I said at the beginning, the 3 C's aren't there anymore, right? So maybe characterize the type of manufacturing you are doing for clients. Obviously, it's varied across this, but is it mostly? I mean, what's considered high volume in what you're doing there, and in what sectors are you doing that? And Jim, I know that for like you guys, you do a lot of aero defense. I think medical, you alluded to the industrial as well, but what characterize the work you're doing here?
Yeah, sure. So at the core of what we do are complex products, and we do a lot of defense and aerospace as well. Do a lot in semiconductor capital equipment, and general industrial products, some medical thrown in there as well. But we're making high-end robotic products, for instance, that might have a BOM of several thousand, components. We're doing heavy, large semiconductor, high-level assemblies that require, heavy lift capability in our clean room. For us, we're a mid-volume player. That's our sweet spot, and it varies from product to product. But we're talking in the low thousands. Might be a kind of sweet spot. Really, it's some combination of that and the revenue mix that makes kind of the ideal customer relationship for us. And then across all our factories, we're also doing a lot of component work, and about half of that, maybe a little more than half, is dedicated to verticals to go into those higher level assemblies and complex products. That's kind of broad overview of the mix of what we're doing in our factories.
Yeah. Brad, how is it with you?
Yeah, I call it a hodgepodge, for us. We have some higher volume customers. We do some like automotive aftermarket products that run 30 to 40,000 pieces a year. We run very complex, full system level voting machines where, we might do, 13 to 18,000, of those in a year. Then I do complex things like helicopter hoists where we might do 10. But we do 40 different products, for that customer. So, there's a really, really broad mix. What I like to call the consumable defense products, one-time use, little higher volumes on those. Yeah. Like we do a gimbal, and we do the full machining, full assembly, testing, shake and bake, everything, on that for one of our customers. That's actually IP that we owned, that we acquired as a favor, for a customer who had a supplier going out of business. And we did 30 of them this year. We'll do 5 next year. And we're doing the next generation of that product, and we'll do 1 of that so they can get their flight testing done this year, and then it'll ramp. But, it'll never be more than, 2,000 pieces, of that in a year. So, it really is more about the repeatability of the revenue stream, the length of the product. When we're dealing with the medical products, with the aerospace and defense and the space products, you're looking at 10 to 20 year life cycles on the products compared to the consumer style stuff where, you're lucky to get 18 months. So we steer clear of that because we really can't create the value stream, in that long term that we can in the longer life products and even the high rel industrial products. I've got a customer that we've literally been building the exact same product. They were one of my first customers back in 1999, and we're still building that. And there's some of that equipment actually in the expansion they recently did of the Panama Canal. So, it's some stuff just continues to hang on and hang on and hang on. And then there's a lot of stuff that's new and upcoming. So, it's a really exciting time to be in the EMS business.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
Supply chain out of it.
Yeah. Jim, you spent a lot of years in tier 1 and in 2 of the largest businesses in tier 1. What can you do now that you couldn't do then?
Well, just to be honest, quite honest, what's the profile of the business that's in our sweet spot is usually not served very well by the tier 1 EMS. It's too small, gets lost. The cost structure that they put in place to service their larger customer relationships doesn't work well to kind of to give the kind of intimate support that smaller customers need. And so we do that a lot better, I think. Probably just companies in our tier, so not just Libra, but in our tier, just serve that kind of customer a lot better. Similar to what Brad was saying, we have very long-standing customer relationships too, so that repeatable revenue stream is not only important, just the way it turns out in these relationships. So these customers get involved with us, and they just stay with us for a long time because they get that service level they're looking for. So Gem City, one of our component legacy businesses, has been around for 85 years, continuous manufacturing. So that's pretty long legacy. So we have customers that are literally over 50 years. Customer relationship. That's kind of crazy when you think about it. I don't recall any of those at Jabil and Flex. And I learned a lot of great things at both of those companies. You know, a lot about repeatable, scalable manufacturing.
Mm.
And we borrowed what we, you know, what we can, what makes sense for a company of our size, putting, you know, certain processes and systems, disciplines in place. But then there's just a level of flexibility that we can provide customers that you're just not going to get at that level of the industry.
Yeah, yeah, and they
Yeah,
allow you to be
that's
way more competitive.
yeah, that's exactly right, and we look at it the same way. You know, one of our other key deals is making it easy for the customers to do business with us, and we look at that as agility. You know, agility is something that the tier one EMS guys just don't have and they can't get. The other piece is autonomy. You know, my site general managers and my executive teams within the regions have full autonomy to do what they need to do to take care of the customer, and then come back and tell me what they did later without fear of you know, recrimination and judgment.
Yeah.
Oh, you went outside of our normal deal. You know, they did what they needed to do to take care of the customer and grow the business. So, you know, if that's creating an LTA that allows us to get into other divisions and gives a rebate or a price decrease to go do that, they can go do that without coming back through, you know, the overall channel. You know, they're businessmen first and customer relationship second. So they're going to make the right decisions, and I'm not going to question that, and I don't have to question that, which, you know, takes a lot off my plate and allows me to focus on the longer term strategic stuff that I need to do to keep Virtex relevant, you know, going through the next 5 years.
Mhm. Both of you, of your companies, have a footprint in Mexico as well. And I know we're here to talk about manufacturing in the United States, but obviously Mexico is a key component to manufacturing in North America. So maybe speak to the importance and how you use that and leverage that to the benefit of your customers. And Jim, why don't we come back to you, sir?
Yeah, we'd like to say that, you know, we offer onshore and nearshore, you know, solutions for our customers. And look, you talk about the reliable revenue streams and these products that go through a life cycle, and particularly when it's a long-lived life cycle of years and not 18 months that a consumer product is, it might need a migration path to a lower cost solution. And so we like to offer that to our customers, that we can start here in the U.S. We can be deeply involved in the product development and taking it from proto into production. But at some point, maybe it makes sense to take all of that product or some of that product and migrate it to a lower cost solution. You know, our Mexican site down in Guaymas is a great site. We have a really talented team down there. They do great work, great quality. So there's a high comfort level for the customers that we have used that strategy with, and then they wind up, you know, in that Guaymas facility. They're very happy being there. So it's worked out really well for us.
Mm-hmm. How about from your perspective, Brad?
Yeah, our perspective on Mexico is actually a little bit different. You know, we opened up our facility in Mexico in 2010 as a favor for one of our customers building ruggedized laptops and servers, you know, that went to military law enforcement and that sort of an area. And, you know, over the years, that's migrated now to PCBA and system level, you know, and most of the laptop business, and that is pretty much all ended up over in China. But what we see is our core customer for Mexico is very, very different than our core customer for our domestic footprint. A lot of the industrial type stuff, but you know, high-end agricultural lighting is very popular down there. Industrial energy control systems, things like that have a lot of touch or a lot of long test cycles. You know, a lot of the stuff that we do in the really ultra low volume would be a horrible fit for Mexico because the logistics cost would kill us. The time and the logistics just take that out of making sense. So, you know, we do almost no transfer of product from our other sites to Mexico, although we do a lot of prototype pre-production ramp, you know, in our facilities that are more focused on that while we get that product ready to go to Mexico, and then we give a very, very smooth handoff, you know, of that. A lot of our IoT customers are looking at that sort of thing. We've got a really interesting, I'll call it adjunct to the medical space product that we're looking at right now that'll be ramping up in Mexico, you know, 35, 40,000 piece a year type quantities, which fit that footprint really, really well. But again, there has to be a lot of touch labor to it. You know, the SMT machines cost what they cost everywhere in the world, right? It's the same, right? So it's, cost per square foot, area, you're kind of about the same. Your support staff isn't a whole lot cheaper down in Mexico. It's just the direct labor piece.
It's just
so
the manual direct
those
labor.
pieces, yeah, those pieces where you're turning a lot of screws or doing very manual functional tests and calibration type cycles along with system level assembly lend itself really, really well. 2/3 of our employees down in Mexico are involved in system level assembly. And then the balance are, our overhead, SG&A, and SMT line. So very, very minimal on the board assembly, way heavier on the system level assembly down there.
Yeah. Yeah. So shifting back to the US and US competitiveness, it's no secret that the government talks about manufacturing as a key part of the recovery. What are they doing? What are they doing to help you on that? What do you need from them for it to be a key part of the economic recovery of the US and provide sustainable jobs?
So the biggest thing I think I need them to do is understand supply chain, which they don't at all. They have no clue what's actually made in the US and what 100% is made in China. The semiconductor industry is a great example. If I go look at my supply chain risk for the US industrial military base, it's a disaster. Almost everything is made, overseas in an Asia Pac area. There's very, very little. There's some memory and a few other parts, some processors and that are made here, but the majority of them, have moved. If it's a controlled part, it's moved to a Taiwan rather than a China. But at the end of the day, that's not a safe place for it to be either. It's only a matter of time before Taiwan ends up like Hong Kong. So, through either economic or military means, at some point, China's going to control Taiwan.
Yeah.
So, we have to get control of that. So the semiconductor side of things, the PCBA side of things, you guys probably know this, but, 20 years ago, there were 2,000, US-based PCB manufacturers.
Board shops,
now there's like 200 board shops. So, our choices are a lot less. A lot of those have been swallowed up by the really, really big players like TTM, which is great because they've, enhanced the economy of scale, but they've limited the choices. So when they get full, you're at kind of a disadvantage, if you're not, a key, customer. Then fortunately we are, we've got a long-term agreement with them. So, we can do well, but there's lots of players who struggle in that. And, if I was trying to go ahead and bring all of the work that's done, in a lot of areas back here, I couldn't get employees. That's the third leg of that stool. Is the U.S. really needs to do more to teach high school and that manufacturing is a great career and it's upwardly mobile. There's growth path. You can make good money without incurring a ton of college debt. I've got a lot of employees on my lines that make better money than guys who have a 4-year or even an 8-year degree. Because they've spent the last 8 to 10 years learning the stuff in manufacturing. They've moved up to significant positions. So we've got to increase the focus on people wanting to do manufacturing. We were talking about Mexico. That's one of the great things about Mexico. People there want to work manufacturing. It's way better than working in the fields or in the service sector. Yeah. So here everybody wants to work in software, right? It's like, oh, I want to go get this, and we've made software sexy. Well, manufacturing needs to be sexy. Manufacturing is sexy. So we just need people to understand it.
Yeah.
Manufacturing is sexy. Jim, what do you need? How are you?
Do you feel sexy, Jim?
Yeah, I think manufacturing is very sexy. That's why when I transitioned into this industry, that's why I stayed here. I don't know. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about what the government can do for us to grow business and make us more competitive. I suspect Brad doesn't either. The markets are by and large going to decide what things should be made where. I do think supportive educational programs is at every level. We could use a lot more apprenticeship type programs here in the U.S. for all kinds of manufacturing. So support of that educational programs would be really helpful. Yeah, I think there is a natural, kind of bounce back to onshore and nearshore manufacturing right now because the risk profile and the cost in Asia has gone up. And it's being supported in some industries, particularly semiconductor, by this push for technological sovereignty, right? We need to be competitive. And the U.S., I think if you look what's happened in semiconductor in Arizona, for instance, we can't afford to be bystanders in that. And so when other countries are given advantages to certain industries, we need to react to that in some way or the other. But I don't spend a whole lot of time thinking of how we're disadvantaged and how the government could be doing more for us, to be honest.
Yeah.
To some
probably
extent,
not
it's kind
joking.
of like the medical oath, right? First, do no harm.
Yeah.
The best thing you can do for me as the government is just get the hell out of my way. Right?
Keep out of the way.
Don't be an impediment. You're likely not going to be a help because we're small and mid-sized businesses.
Yeah.
So we're not the focal point, right?
Yeah.
So
let me take a stab at that in a different direction then. Same kind of basic topic, because so what needs to happen to maintain the competitiveness in the United States, to maintain the work that you're doing here in the United States? Now, I understand for the military, it's one thing, right, with ITAR and things. But for some of these other ones, what do you need? What needs to happen to maintain that here, maintain that competitiveness? Jim, you're shaking your head. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think going back to educational programs and support for educational programs. And, I'm not advocating for any specific policy, but certainly there's policies that can be supported that would really, reinforce the, STEM programs, for instance, to make sure that we continue to have engineering folks come out, and not just software engineers, with broad-based engineering talent that can support, the range of manufacturing, from aerospace to semiconductor, to industrial. So we're going to continue to need that talent, and that engineering base to stay in this game. So whatever the incentives need to be put in place to kind of help support that, I think is critical, for 10, 20 years from now, for the manufacturing base here in the U.S.
When you get into that talent discussion, do you think of, is there a role there for automation? So you've got to automate to push out the direct labor costs, as Brad said. You've got a direct labor advantage down in Mexico, but if you look at it in the US, as compared to Asia, that's one of the key elements. So automation takes you in that direction. But I'm hearing increasingly people saying, we've had to automate this process because we just can't hire people, or we just can't find the talent to do it in North America. So has automation got a role to play in making you more competitive, but at the same time filling the gap that you have with respect to talent?
I think that's a mixed bag, Phil. I mean, I think their automation certainly does, but that automation isn't entirely manufacturing automation, right? It's RPA, robotic process automation on some of your front end and your back end stuff. It's leaning out your process through full implementation of IoT, machine learning, and advanced analytics. Those things are going to increase our efficiencies and have increased our efficiencies, over the last few years, and will only continue to go expand. The things that we do on the front end of the process, I like to say, it takes us the same amount of work, to set up and build, a job for one as it does to do 1,000. So we got to be really, really good at one, right? Or we get destroyed. So, we focus on that sort of thing and get really, really good at that, and you're aware of one, we're putting together some partnerships to make those front end pieces, even easier. And I look forward to hopefully having those guys and me back on to talk about that when we get that rolling out. But, we really need to automate a lot of the front end stuff, continue to make things easier for the customer, continue to reduce cycle time. And if we can do those things, we make our customers more competitive, and the unit cost becomes less because the first to market can command a higher price. So we've got to get the customers to market there easier, faster, better than their competitors. And that's going to go a long way to making, US more competitive. The second piece of that is don't create a tax structure, that penalizes them to do the work here. It's, anything you do that hurts us, is bad. But automation, we've done some robotics. We may look at doing some more stuff in terms of, automating some pieces of the kitting process, that with robotics. But for the most part, unless you're going to go, more of the cobot style where you're working, with the robot in there with the operator, for the kind of stuff that we're doing, we need people. Robots are really, really good and repeatable, but they're not very smart. They're only as smart as how we program them, right?
Yeah.
So, I need that human piece. I need that human intelligence, because, it's my operators who go, hey, this is a better way to go do this, right? When we're doing a Kaizen event, it's not the engineers who come up with the best ideas, it's the folks on the floor. And as soon as I take them out of the equation, for a robot, I lose that piece, and I depend on that piece way too much. So, that really won't be, as big a focus as how do we take the burden off of the front end piece and the back end piece, and allow us to use those people to focus on the core stuff of how do we lean out this process and make it better for the customer.
We have a similar mindset. We don't have a big push to further automate our processes. I think we're automated where we need to be in the, most of our manufacturing processes, and we're not making 10 million of something a year. And so the investment it would take to kind of automate that process, when you're making a 5,000 of something, you don't get the return. Where we are spending, investment and energy is in data analytics to better manage the supply chain, and more complex, the more risk gets infused into supply chain solutions. You need really good data analytics around that, and even to schedule your factories around those kind of longer lead time supply chain solutions that we're seeing these days. So we're getting more bang for the buck on data analytics. I will say though that our customers are automating, and that's a good thing, because we're deep into complex robotics, and so the more that our customers that make 10 million of something, want to automate, and we can support those products that help them do that, we're all for that.
Yeah, and you're making robots more than you're using robots.
Exactly.
Yeah, and same here. The other thing that I think that's really, really important is the things that manufacturing, or U.S. manufacturing in particular, can do together within consortiums, within trade groups, and frankly within to Jim's point, mentorships and that, partnerships with local universities, community colleges, high schools, that do help us educate, that piece about what manufacturing is all about. We're very, very big on internships, summer internships. I've got an intern working here in the Austin office right now, who is a supply chain major at University of Arkansas, and man, is he getting an eye-opening deal. And he's like, holy cow, I'm actually doing work, right? Because he's, it's not the stuff nobody wants to do. He goes, I'm learning. He goes, but I'm learning a lot of stuff that's in the books is not right. I'm like, yeah, at least it's not right now, right? So, making those experiences meaningful, to where, we can use them to identify that next generation of talent for us, is huge. And having, mentorship, deal within the factories. We bring employees in, you partner them up with more senior person to help teach that job and accelerate their progress. It just makes a huge, huge difference. A lot of our key, new generation of employees are employees who came to us through internships, mentor programs, co-op type, deals. And, we really need to expand that. We're involved with a number of manufacturing initiatives as well, where we've just got to go focus on, what is the next generation, and keep understanding that and making it relevant. And that includes working with the universities. So, I was recently asked to join my alma mater is the University of South Florida, and I got asked to join the Dean's Advisory Board. And we spend a lot of time talking about, how do we advance this stuff? How do we drive these things into research and get stuff where the students are getting manufacturing initiatives. So, the more we can get in front of the guys and the girls who are influencing, the next generation of our leaders, the better we're going to go ahead and handle the job and staffing issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a ton of similar activities going on inside the company as what Brad just went through. A lot of internships, a lot of apprenticeships, and then talk about what the government could do or what we can do for ourselves. I mean, the best self-help thing that we can do that I can think of for our own company is that leadership development and taking those internships, and we do rotational programs. So hey, you're coming out of college, you don't necessarily know what you want to do for the next 20 years. So let's spend 6 months in quality. Let's spend 6 months in engineering. Let's spend 6 months in supply chain. Maybe some on the business development side, and you get a taste of all those areas, and that's going to make that person a much broad-based, stronger, leader in the organization years from now. It's also the most rewarding part of the job, right? And it's also surprising that the great ideas that come from those, I call them kids at my age, but the great ideas that get generated, you didn't expect them. You think you're putting them in a learning situation, and they are, but that doesn't mean that they can't be contributing as well. And for me, just even being in this industry, being in this job, and what I've done in the industry the last 10 years of why I enjoy it so much is creating jobs. So if we're growing our companies, we're creating good, solid, U.S.-based jobs for a lot of folks. And that's the most rewarding part of the job for me.
Yeah. And they're well paid and they're sustainable jobs.
Yeah, it's not a retail service job.
And the other big difference to me, particularly not just manufacturing as a whole, but the EMS sector is you're not doing the same thing every day, right? If I'm I was a process engineer, when I got out of school, some of the jobs that I had an option for is like, I might be running, the packaging line to wrap paper towels. Big deal. How exciting does that stay day after day after day? I mean, I get it's important, and I get it's about squeaking out tenths of a penny, but that's not the same as getting to build different stuff day in, day out, watching products get launched, see them get out of the marketplace. And, I mean, we're doing stuff, right now that's going in spacecraft, that's going to be going to Mars. How cool is that? I mean, my kids, are 20 and 23, and they think it's just, incredibly cool that, dad's company's building stuff that's going to go to Mars.
Goes into space.
Yeah. It's already gone to space. So, I mean, that kind of stuff, you can't replace that. And that's what's going to keep the U.S. competitive is, the excitement around understanding this is how stuff gets built, right? That program, how it's made, is always fascinating, right? Even if it's something that I don't build, I love watching that to go see how stuff is made. That's I just get geeked out on that kind of technology. It's fun.
Hey, let me go back to one issue. I'm aware of the time, but I want to make sure we get to this. There's a lot of talk about the DFM, right? And that handoff from the design to manufacturing, that's so critical, and especially in these environments. And we're talking about a lot of the related elements with automation and the skill set of people. So what's your perspective on that? Is that even more critical these days? And does that require kind of new tools and competencies for the people that you're hiring? Jim, let me come back to you on that first.
Yeah, I think that's critically important. And I think the more complex products that you're making, the more essential that is. When you really have to use an example of tolerance stack-ups for everything on a print, and if it's a complex product that is a 100-page print that you're building to, each individual part, component, and you can make it to its specification. But when you put that complex product together, it's made from thousands of components. You can start to run into tolerance stack-ups and things like that. So we're really proud of the team that we have on our assembly floor here in Dayton, particularly, because they come from a tool and die legacy. And some of these folks have moved over from their tool and die jobs over to complex product assembly. And they have this intimacy with particularly machine parts and putting together complex mechatronic assemblies that, they can mark up a book of the prints on the fly and go back to our customer and say, hey, putting this thing together for the first time, here's the 110 things that we've seen that, you might want to change. And this tolerance is okay for the, for the individual part, but once it gets put into the overall assembly, we want to back off the high end to keep it on the low end, so narrow that down. So the more complex products that you're involved in, the more critical the DFM is, and you need really skilled people to provide that DFM. So when I did work in tier one, those companies had a DFM department, so the people that, there's a couple of engineers that would kind of give that kind of feedback. But here, and this is, you say, what are the things that we can do in this size company, in this space that we couldn't do in that tier one space? This is an example, is to have that kind of talent on the floor and not have the floor so automated, and that you don't have people that have an intimacy to the technology, to have an understanding that they can give that feedback during the proto builds. So that's a really important aspect for us. And we think it's a really big value that we deliver to the customers.
Yeah. And Brad, it's got to, I like on your website, under your sectors, you have one called something new. And so I'd imagine, especially in that, when you're doing something for the first time, something new, this DFM is ultra critical.
So yes and no. DFM is certainly critical, but DFM is the tip of the iceberg. It's DFX. It's designed for test. It's designed for supply chain. It's designed for manufacturability. It's designed for shipment, right? I mean, the two biggest critical things we have going right now are supply chain and logistics. If we don't do a good job of designing the product, and again, we're doing the full product specification development at the front end, the very first thing we're doing is checking availability of parts. We've got a medical customer right now who, brought a new product to us. The very first thing we did was we scrubbed their BOM and said, you've got these 23 parts that have lead times of a year. You want to be building inside of 3 months? That's either going to cost you a fortune or it's not going to happen. So we're helping them redesign, change to these parts that we can get. We'll be building in August. So they'll be able to make their Q4 numbers, and then they're, a venture funded company where, having that stuff matters. So designing for supply chain now is super critical. And then, because cargo space is limited, how well can you package it? How many can you get, in there? What's it cost? I mean, a 42-foot container on the ocean used to cost us, $1,300. It's almost $5,000. And if we're expediting, it can be 13 grand. So, that's adding up to stupid money. I mean, I've got customers that'll overrun their freight bills and budgets by $250,000 this year easily. So the more that we can do to go ahead and do that, the better. And then the same thing with tests. The more things that we can do to make it, built-in test, automate portions of it, reduce the amount of things that have to be debugged, reduce the amount of scrap. That's really the 80% of the iceberg that sits below the water, which is where we really like to play and where we can really, really show value. It's just, DFM is good, but it's almost too late if you're starting, at that point anymore for a lot of our customers.
And are you at the point now where you're designing for disruption? We saw the trade war, we saw the pandemic, now we've got component shortages. You've got to have some, we spend a lot of time worrying about just in time. Now we've got to think much more about just in case. Is that changing some of the design rules?
In the medical side of things, you've got people designing for disruption. They want to be that disruptive technology, that does it to not be the me too. In the aerospace and defense side, you could say it's all either disruption or or not, because you're designing things for a particular purpose that doesn't typically exist. And the same thing for space. That's why we love playing in the space market is that's all about disruption.
Everything's new.
It's totally disrupting the status quo. So most of our customers are all about disruption. I've got a really interesting customer that's kind of bridging the piece of IoT and medical right now that I'm under an NDA, so I can't really talk about what they're doing, but it's super interesting from a standpoint of traceability at levels of stuff that people haven't really been doing. And then so those sorts of things where you're blending the standard technologies now of Wi-Fi, BTLE, those sorts of things with other products, to tie that into some of the technologies like blockchain, and that to do full end-to-end traceability and lifecycle, it's just going to be a super interesting, next 5 or 10 years, and we're thrilled to be a part of it.
Yeah, I think when you ask that question, Phil, I think about designing solutions for our customers. And you definitely have to design for disruption. You have to think about, as Brad was talking earlier, about what gets on the bomb, and then just how you manage your builds and safety stocks and kind of insurance policies of how you're going to manage over a long term. I mean, some of our products, the lead times are a year or longer on parts. So you just think of today, you have a 52-week lead time on a part. Is there something going to happen in those 52 weeks that's going to extend that lead time? How do you manage that, and how do you plan around that?
Yeah.
So I think that's on everybody's minds. I think on designing solutions, how do we put a solution together that's going to ensure that we're going to be able to maintain some semblance of schedule.
Yeah, and a big part of that is just communicating and working with the customers.
Yep.
Yeah, we've already booked 100% of our 2021 AOP annual operating plan, which is 20% above last year, and we by now booked 35% of 2022. So our customers are working with us to get out in front of the supply chain so that we can place the longer term POs. We're diversifying the sources that we're getting it from. We're bringing on new partnerships, but it's really more for us, about advanced planning communication rather than planning for disruption. Because disruptions are going to happen. And if I would have picked the last 5 surprises that are going to jump up and bite me on the backside, I would have guessed wrong on all 5, right? I mean, I wouldn't have bet on a pandemic. I wouldn't have bet that, PCBA raw materials were going to go through the roof. I wouldn't have bet that every single electronic component known to man was going to go on allocation, or lead time. And I wouldn't have guessed that the economy would have come back and the jobs would have got filled in and those folks would have got that tight. So, I could have guessed everywhere in the world and planned for it, and I would have been wrong. So, we just need to have contingencies and we need to have advanced planning in place to get us ahead of that. And like they say, strategy, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So our culture is really, really good at fixing and handling contingencies. And they're handling a lot of it now.
And what your tier is great at, and that's the case with both businesses, is having that agile culture that it's very, very difficult to have at the the $25 billion revenue level.
Yeah. Hey, let me just end with just a looking forward question for both of you. What's your view on you're both obviously very optimistic about the industry. Brad just said, he's very excited for the next 5 years and what have you. But as you look at the EMS industry in North America and all the multiple players, and there's still quite a few, right? What's your view of how that's going to shake out over the next few years? I mean, it seems to be the trend towards consolidation, needing to have better purchasing power, better competencies. Are we going to see more of a stratification within that then? What's your view of it moving forward? Jim, you're nodding your head. What do you think?
Crystal ball time.
I expect we're going to continue to see some consolidation, but I think the market, the needs of the market are going to require, companies at the different levels, at the tier 1 level, at our level, and levels below us. And so I don't see us consolidating any tier of the industry out of existence. It might just narrow down as kind of Darwinism, like the best are going to be the ones that survive in each tier. So that's what I would expect to see. And I expect to see growth, and I expect to continue to see onshoring and nearshoring as people, as customers and industries kind of de-risk their supply chains. I know memories are short, but I think what's happened over the last 18 months, it might stick with folks for a little while anyway, in terms of their strategy of how they intend to source. So I think, those are the things we're going to see in the next 5 years or so.
Yeah, I tend to agree. There's a place for all of them. Virtex has no desire to ever be a tier 1. That's not who we are. That's not what's in our DNA, and that's not who we serve. And the same token, there's a lot of customers that aren't a great fit, for us because they're too small, and we can't serve them as well as the tier 4s can go ahead and do. I mean, I've got a short list of a couple of tier 4s that I routinely send business to in each of our regions. because, I look at them almost more like partners, than, we have no desire to acquire them. They're not really a fit to what we do, but they're not a competition to what we do either. So, to me, I'm doing my customer, a better service if I can go ahead and put them in a place that I know is going to take care of them. And then maybe they do grow. Maybe they go big enough where they got to go come to us. And I've got one of the customers that we send the stuff to that, he was doing some of the stuff for this customer, and then they grew up, and now we're building for them, in Mexico. Yeah. We built for them in Austin for a while, and I continue to send stuff down, and, we had that sort of an arrangement with, Flex for a while, and we've got referrals from the Jables and out of the world for stuff that doesn't fit. Yeah. I mean, I've got business development friends in all of the tier ones, and, they have that same philosophy. There's a place for all the tiers in the EMS space. There's certainly some advantages, to scale. We've been able to do a lot of stuff as far as our terms and things like that across all of our divisions and extend that. But, in reality, we're never going to do global procurement, from one location. It's too important for us to support the distributors in the regions where we are. They're a great source of leads for us. They're great partners as well. So, we need to go ahead and support those because, I don't want them to go to a, single distribution, site model, single sales office. I want that support in the region, because when we need them, like right now, we really need them. And if I was calling, the global guys for Avnet down in Guadalajara, versus, the local guys that I get to deal with, I mean, I'm not going to have as good a thing. And the same thing holds true with the, the arrows and the futures and, and all of that. So TTI.
Okay. Good. Well, gentlemen, you've been very generous with your time and your insights today. And so we certainly appreciate that. Phil, as always, thank you for staying up late.
Absolute pleasure.
I know he's heading off to bed. The rest of us.
I'm going to bed. Yeah, it's 2 a.m. here.
He's going to the bar. Don't let him fool you. He's going to the bar.
There you go.
Last call.
Straight up behind me. Last orders.
Yeah, right. Last call.
That's
Aussie style.
Yeah, but gentlemen, thank you again. I think this has been it tells a good story for you for manufacturing here in the United States, and that's what we were hoping to accomplish. So thank you for contributing to that. For anybody in the audience watching this, it's Libra, it's Virtex. If what you've heard resonates and you wish to reach out, please reach out to these gentlemen. They do excellent work here. So gentlemen, thank you very much. Hopefully we catch up another time.
Sounds good. Thanks, Eric.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, guys.